All right. Hello again, adventurers, and welcome to another exciting episode of D&D Deep Dive, the show where we dive deep into classes, subclasses, and other features of 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons to help you get the most out of your choices. So, today, we are going to study the innately magical power of the sorcerer. We're going to be going over the new optional features for the sorcerer, and in addition, we are going to be covering the Aberrant Mind Sorcerous Origin, which is actually way back when they released 3 new Psionic subclasses. We've covered two of them. We had the fighter one and the rogue one that were somewhat similar. They just kind of changed how the psionic die worked. Now we're going to be going over the Aberrant Mind, which was the Sorcerer psionic class, and this is completely different than what they had in the Unearthed Arcana. So I'm excited to go over that. So let's dive into this. As I do every single time, we are going to start with a quick primer on how 5th edition class design works. Basically, in 5th edition, every single class should play very, very differently right from the beginning. And in order to do that, each class is going to have these things that we call defining features. And these defining features should show up within the first two levels. For the sorcerer, the defining features they have, obviously they're a spellcaster, but their defining features are actually their sorcerous origin, their subclass. They actually choose at first level, like the cleric. Their choice of their subclass at first level is going to pretty massively change how they play the sorcerer itself. So that is one of their defining features, is going to be, a draconic sorcerer is going to play differently than a wild magic, than an aberrant mind sorcerer. So there's that. In addition, at second level, they get what's called Font of Magic, which gives them access to a new resource called sorcery points. Now, at second level, the only thing that sorcery points can do is effectively you can turn spell slots into sorcery points and then sorcery points into spell slots. So it gives them the actual the term they use for it in the write-up is flexible casting. It allows them to be much more flexible when they're casting. And once you hit third level, they actually get what's called Metamagic options, which allows them to change their spells on the fly. So the sorcerer itself is built around this kind of flexibility in spell casting. It's built into the lore of the class, where they just have this kind of innate inborn ability to cast magic, which is different from wizards, who gain their ability to cast magic through years and years of study, and warlocks, who get their ability to cast magic from making a pact with a powerful creature. Those are kind of defining features of this as a sorcerer. Let's look at the optional features first. First things first, just like every other spellcasting class, we have additional sorcerer spells. This is the same optional feature that every other spellcasting class gets, and effectively it is a way for the class to get access to the new spells that are into Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, and to expand their spell list for stuff that probably should have been there before, but for whatever reason just wasn't. The sorcerer gets a lot of new spells. I think they get almost every new spell into Tasha's. They get the Bladesinger cantrips. They get Mind Sliver, which is the new psionic cantrip. And then they get, the other kind of new stuff. The Tasha's Caustic Brew, Tasha's Mind Whip, Dream of the Blue Veil, Blade of Disaster, and then a couple other ones that they didn't have access to before. Things like Bigby's Hand, Fire Shield, Magic Weapon, Flame Blade. Just kind of adding on to the kit of the sorcerer to give them a little bit more of a variety. A lot of the abilities that they have here actually can help you to build kind of a more melee focused sorcerer with things like Flame Blade, Magic Weapon, Fire Shield is actually really, really useful if you're going to be getting up close and personal with the enemies. So yeah, they also get Vampiric to touch, which is a touch-based spell. So if you want to build kind of a melee sorcerer with these new sorcerer spells, you're going to have a little bit easier time doing it. The next optional feature you get is third level. They give 2 new Metamagic options, both of which I think are really interesting. The first one is called Seeking Spell. If you make an attack roll for a spell and miss, you can spend 2 sorcery points to re-roll the d20 and must use the new roll. And you can use Seeking Spell even if you've already used a different Metamagic option during the cast of this spell. The thing with Metamagic, you can only use one Metamagic option per spell you cast, other than specific ones like Seeking Spell that specifically say, oh, you can combine this with another Metamagic. So just the ability to reroll an attack roll is always useful. I like the fact that you are limited to, you have to use the second roll. You can't just keep casting Seeking Spell until it hits. But it does mean that when you need those spells to hit, they're going to hit. The second Metamagic option, which I think is even cooler, is called Transmuted Spell, which when you cast a spell that deals a specific damage type, we'll list them in a second here, you can spend 1 sorcery point to change the damage type to another one of the other listed types. They're Acid, Cold, Fire, Lightning, Poison, and the Thunder. This is super cool. Basically, it means you are never going to have to deal with resistance to your spells, because if you have a creature that's resistant or maybe even immune to, let's say, fire, and you want to cast Fireball, okay, turn it into an Ice Ball or a Poison Ball. Like, there's just so many really interesting things from kind of a tactical aspect that are really useful if you can just change the damage type. Now, one thing I noticed they don't have in here is they don't have Necrotic or Radiant, which would be useful specifically for dealing with things like undead tend to have really bad reactions to Radiant damage. But it does kind of make sense that this is more elemental in nature. So, yeah. The other thing that's nice is it does add a little bit of versatility to your spells in the idea that sometimes there's just really, really useful spells that you want to cast, but because they do a very specific damage type, you might not normally use them. Like if you're fighting trolls, you're generally going to be focusing on a lot of fire spells because it turns off their it turns off their regeneration. However, things like Tidal Wave is a really, really useful spell. So if you could turn Tidal Wave into Fire Wave, like that kills 2 birds with 1 stone. And it's just really, really interesting. Also, from a role-playing perspective, the ability to just magically change your spells into other damage types is just cool. So yeah, really, really love that. 4th level, the optional feature is Sorcerous Versatility, which is anytime you get the ability score improvement feature, you can replace one of your Metamagic options with a different one, and you can, or you can replace one cantrip with another cantrip from the Sorcerer's spell list. I've said this many times before. I am a fan of the versatility optional features. Anything that allows you to course correct your character as you are playing them and leveling them up, I'm a big fan of. It was something that was actually built into fourth edition, and it effectively meant it was very, very difficult to build a useless character in fourth edition. It wasn't impossible, but it was very difficult. Because if you did, you just had to wait it to your next little level up, and you could change any ability that you wanted. The same thing is true about fifth edition. It's more difficult to build, or it's easier to build a useless character in fifth edition than it was in fourth edition. But these versatility optional features really go a long way into changing that. So I'm always a fan of that. The final optional feature is called Magical Guidance. And this one I'm less thrilled about just because it doesn't really fit with the Sorcerer. Basically, when you make an ability check that fails, you can spend 1 sorcery point to re-roll the d20, and you must use the new roll, potentially turning the failure into a success. I'm not a huge fan of this because sorcerers are built on the idea that they have this natural inborn ability to control magic. Being able to reroll an acrobatics check or perception check doesn't really fit that the theme very well. This kind of feels tacked on as like, oh, let's give you another way you could use your sorcery points, which is fine. Again, sorcery points are the defining feature of the class. But there's already a ton of uses for your sorcery points to the point where you don't really need another one. And again, it just doesn't really make a ton of sense to me for your magic to suddenly make you better at remembering things with the history of ability. Or suddenly make you stealthier without you casting a spell. Just your natural inborn magic. It doesn't make sense. This would make a little bit more sense if it was combined with maybe the wild magic feature, because that's based on just randomness and chance. So that optional feature would make a lot more sense for a wild mage than just any sorcerer. So that particular optional feature I'm not a fan of. I probably wouldn't allow it in my games just because it doesn't really feel very sorcerous. It just feels like a way to game the system, and I don't like that. I don't think it adds anything to the character at all. So yeah, those are the optional features overall. Other than magical guidance, I like them. I think they're interesting. I love the new spells. Yeah. Let's go to the Aberrant Mind. Now, I did cover Psionic subclasses a while ago, and I've been recovering them in this because significant changes happened with the other ones. However, with the other ones that we talked about, they were not nearly as significant as this. They changed how the psionic die worked, and because of that, they had to modify a few of the abilities. The Aberrant Mind Sorcerer is a complete reworking of a psionic sorcerer. First of all, they don't have access to psionic die at all. So unlike the Unearthed Arcana, where they wanted to have this kind of unifying theme, which was the psionic die, this is just going far more into the idea of what would kind of a psionic sorcerer be like, and how would that happen. And this one leads really, really hard into the kind of far realm abyss kind of feel for it. Your sorcerer origin is always going to have like explanations for how that actually gave it, and the aberrant origins are exactly what you would think. Something like you were exposed to the far realm's warping influence. You were convinced that a tentacle is now growing on you, but no one can see it. Or as a child, you had an imaginary friend that looked like a flump or a strange platypus-like creature. One day it gifted you with psionic powers, which have ended up being not so imaginary. So basically, kind of your almost Lovecraftian the themes to how you get your sorcerer's abilities, which I like. I think it's interesting. I think it's cool. The first feature you get for the Aberrant Mind is called Psionic Spells, which is, you would think, is just like every other spellcasting class where they get some additional spells that are available to them. However, as we go through this, you're going to be able to find out that this is not the case. These Psionic Spells actually are going to act differently than any other spells you have. But for right now, at just level 1, this is just an expanded spell list. Again, the way it works is, these spells, sorcerers don't have to prepare spells, they just learn spells. But these don't count against the number of spells you can learn. And these are very, very different than like the cleric spells, where maybe some of them are spells you wouldn't have access to. No, I think almost all of these are spells that a sorcerer normally wouldn't have access to. First of all, you get Mind Sliver. You just learn it. So Mind Sliver is going to be a cantrip, and you get to learn other cantrips instead of it. So that's nice. But I want to say, like, the majority of the rest of these spells are actually warlock spells. Things like Arms of Hadar, Hunger of Hadar, Evard's Black Tentacles. These are all the things that are generally are normally exclusive to the warlock class, and they all have kind of, some unifying features, let's say. They deal with tentacles and crazy stuff, which makes perfect sense. They're really, really useful as spells. Overall, I like this as Psionic Spells, and as we go further on, you're going to find out just how awesome these spells become. The other first level ability you get is Telepathic Speech. As a bonus action, choose one creature you can see within 30 feet of you. You and the chosen creature can speak telepathically with each other, while the two of you are within a number of miles of each other, equal to your charisma modifier. And to understand each other, you each must speak mutually in a language the other knows. And the connection lasts for a number of minutes equal to your sorcerer level, and it ends early if you're incapacitated or die, or if you use this ability to form a connection with a different creature. So I said this before, telepathic communication is massively useful. And this one is really, really nice because it lasts for it will extend for multiple miles. So I made mention when we were talking about, I think it was this Soul Knife, the ability for just this is sneaking forward and having a telepathic connection back to your party, because that will give you the ultimate scouting ability, especially if you accidentally lose connection, or if your scout goes forward and they don't come back. If you have someone that's in constant connection, you can tell exactly what happened. You can get there much faster if something does go wrong. The only limitation is maximum. If you're a 20th level sorcerer, this telepathic speech is only going to last for a maximum of 20 minutes. So this is an extremely limited version of telepathy. However, even just 5 minutes of telepathy and sending someone forward can be really, really useful. And then in addition to that, you can continue making connections, because there's no limitation to how often you can use telepathic speech. So you can continue just making connections to communicate with creatures that are close by as well. I gave that example in one of the previous videos of the party using a couple of warlocks with the ability to speak to the telepathically, to have a conversation while a mind flare was on the other side of a door, and we were able to ambush the mind flare and get out of a really, really bad fight. So yeah, telepathy always useful. At 6th level, you get Psionic Sorcery. And this is where that Psionic Spells feature becomes super different from literally any other class. And even any other Sorcerer subclass. When you cast any spell of 1st level or higher from your Psionic Spells feature, you can cast it by expending expending a spell slot as normal, or by spending a number of sorcery points equal to the spell's level. If you cast the spells using sorcery points, it requires no verbal or somatic components, and it requires no material components unless they are consumed by the spell. This is massive. You effectively have subtle spell without having to cast it. And a lot of these spells are really, really useful. Arms of Hadar is really, really interesting. It prevents a creature from taking reactions. Hunger of Hadar is a great kind of crowd control style ability. And a telekinesis is one of the spells you get. And the ability to cast the telekinesis effectively for 5 sorcery points without needing any verbal or somatic components can be massively useful. So not only are the psionic spells, useful and interesting, but with psionic sorcery, they let you play this sorcerer differently than any other sorcerer in the game, and I love that. I think it's really, really interesting. It does mean that metamagic options can be a little bit used a little bit less, simply because saving those sorcery points so you can cast spells effectively for free can be more beneficial than some of the sorcery things. So overall, just really, really interesting and fun and cool. So damn, that's cool. All right. In addition to Psionic Sorcery at 6th level, you also get Psychic defenses. You get resistance to psychic damage, which is a damage type that you don't really tend to get resistance to often. It's also a relatively rare damage type to have hit you. So, pluses and minuses. You also have advantage on saving throws against being charmed or frightened, which is always useful. Charming and dominating a sorcerer, especially one with Psionic Sorcery, could be super, super bad for your party. So that's nice. At 14th level, you get Revelation in the flesh. Basically, as a bonus action, you can spend 1 or more sorcery points to magically transform your body for 10 minutes. For each sorcery point you spend, you can gain 1 of the following benefits of your choice, the effect of which lasts until the transformation ends. The first one, you can see invisible creatures within 60 feet, provided it isn't behind total cover. Your eyes also turn black or become writhing sensory tendrils, so that's nightmare fuel. You get a flying speed equal to your walking speed, and you can hover. As you fly, your skin glistens with mucus or shines with an otherworldly light. The third one, you gain a swimming speed equal to twice your walking speed, and you can breathe underwater. Moreover, gills grow from your neck or fan out from behind your ears. Your fingers become webbed, or you grow writhing cilia that extend through your clothing. Another nightmare. And the fourth one, your body, along with any equipment you are wearing or carrying, becomes slimy and pliable. You can move through any space as narrow as 1 inch without squeezing. You can spend 5 feet of movement to escape from non-magical restraints or being grappled. So, Revelation in Flesh, for a 14th level ability, I'm not particularly fond of it. Simply because the flying speed is super, super useful in a ton of different situations. The rest is really limited. Again, swimming speed can be really useful in very specific situations. But if you're not near water and you're not fighting underwater, it become significantly less. The slime thing is, again, it's interesting, and in very specific situations could be really useful. But without those situations, it's not. And generally, you don't want to be sending your sorcerer to places without the rest of the party. They tend to be a little squishy. So letting them be able to go somewhere that no one else in your party can follow, maybe not the greatest idea. And then the ability to see invisible creatures, again, can be really useful in specific instances. But there's so many other things you can do to counter invisible creatures that just kind of seems like a waste. So overall, I'm not thrilled with Revelation in Flesh. It fits the theme of just being terrifying beyond all reason. But as far as just mechanical value, it especially for 14th level ability, just doesn't feel very good. Especially when the last ability you got was Psionic Sorcery. Or the last level you got abilities on was Psionic Sorcery, which is almost 10 levels ago. And is massively useful. So yeah, not particularly thrilled about it, but it does kind of make sense. At 18th level, you get Warping Implosion. As an action, you can teleport to an unoccupied space you can see within 120 feet of you. Immediately after you did a disappear, each creature within 30 feet of the space you left must make a strength as a saving throw. On a failed save, a creature takes 3d10 for force damage and is pulled straight towards the space you left, ending in an unoccupied space as close to your former space as possible. On a successful save, they take half as much damage and aren't pulled. You can use it once, then you need to take a long rest, or spend 5 sorcery points to use it again. This is really interesting. It can be incredibly useful because this effectively allows you to set up some pretty amazing combos with other spellcasters or anyone that has area kind of damage. Because what happens is you go into an area you really shouldn't be, which with warping and implosion, things like that slime moving, makes it just a little bit more useful because you now have an ability to get the hell out of there if you are in a bad place. Effectively you go to a place where you really shouldn't be. You're surrounded by enemies. You use this warping implosion to teleport out of there, and it sucks everybody together to make them very easy targets of a fireball, a lightning bolt, cloud kill. Like, there's so many different things you could use, and grouping up the entire enemy into a small space would be great for that. Now, the issue with this is it's effectively a 30-foot radius sphere that you did to do this in, and it's every creature. So if you have any allies within 30 feet of you, you're going to be pulling them in as well and doing damage to them as well. Which really limits the usefulness of this ability. If you could take them with you, or if you could choose not to affect them, this would be significantly more useful. But the massive range that it covers is actually somewhat of a detriment rather than a benefit, simply because you now have to find a way to get at least 30 feet away from every single ally while still trying to get as many enemies as possible to be a part of this. So I like the idea. I would really have to see it used in combat, and I just don't see it being anywhere near as useful as other things that a sorcerer can do. And again, you're burning your action to do that. So at 18th level, you have access to level 9 spells. So you're effectively giving up the chance to cast a level 9 spell to do 3d damage to everybody within a 30-foot radius. I don't think it's anywhere near useful enough. So for final thoughts. Overall, I like the idea of the class. The Psionic Spells themselves are really useful, really interesting. Telepathic speech, telepathy is always useful. However, Psionic Sorcery is really what makes this class, the ability to effectively just cast spells for free just by using your sorcery points and not having to worry about verbal components, somatic components, or material components, as long as the materials aren't consumed by the spell, is a huge deal. And I think it makes sense to get it at 6th level. But because any earlier, and it would be kind of useless because you just don't have enough sorcery points to use it very often. However, because you get it at 6th level, it really kind of undervalues both the 14th level of ability and the 18th level ability. Because compared to getting, free spells that, can't be limited by silence and other things like that, like they're just both kind of weak sauce in comparison. So yeah, overall I like it. I like this more than the Unearthed Arcana version. I think it was a good idea for them to get rid of the Psionic die, because this I think is a more interesting character than the one that they showed off in Unearthed Arcana. Like I said, I just think the higher level abilities just don't quite feel as special as they could. So anyway, that is going to be all for me today. As always, if you enjoyed this, please hit that like button. It really does mean a lot. And also hit that subscribe button. I'm putting out 4 videos a week right now. So yeah, there's always tons of content. Subscribe button means it gets sent directly to your subscribe box. So that's always nice. In addition, hit the notification bell and turn notifications on, because you don't want to miss any of this awesome stuff. And every so often, I put out other videos because I'll have an opinion on something. And because they'll come out at weird times, that notifications on means you never miss them. In the comments below, what kind of nightmare fuel descriptions would you have when you're using your psionic abilities? Everything about this has just been weird, like tentacles growing everywhere and your eyes turning black and mucus forming. Like so in the comments below, what kind of weird stuff would you make your Aberrant Mind Sorcerer do to cast their weird ass spells? Anyway, again, that is all for me today, and I will see you guys next time. All right, bye bye.